All right, question 4, the last one for this AP exam. And this chart takes a while to figure out what the heck's going on, but um, the idea is we have 9 box plots for 3 different types of chemicals found at 3 different types of sites. So once you kind of understand what's going on there, also notice these are percentages. This question actually doesn't seem too bad to me once I was able to look at it and read it for a second, but let's go ahead and go. So for part A, it says for chemical Z, describe how the percentages found in the pieces of pottery are similar and how they differ among the 3 sites. Okay, so let's talk about it. First, let's talk about similarities. Here are the 2 things I can see most. All 3 sites have about the same median percentage of chemical Z. You can see the middle line in the rectangle is all about the same. And all 3 sites are approximately symmetric in the distribution of chemical Z. That's about all I can say there. For similarities, again, you can see the line is about in the middle for each of them. And again, if you look at how much is above, particularly in the rectangle and outside of it, for each of them, they're all about identical. So to me, that's about all I can really say that's totally similar about them overall. So let's talk about differences. The main 2 things we can say about the differences are the IQR for site 2 is much smaller than the similar IQRs of sites 1 and 3. Hopefully you can see that the IQR, or in other words, the size of the rectangular box is much smaller for Z than 1 and 3. Now also, the total range of data in site 2 is much smaller. We can say within 2%, right? The entire range is within 2%. Whereas the other ones, so I guess I'll say that. Site 1 has a range of, what is that, from 4 to 10, so 6%. And site 3 has a range of, it's going from like essentially 3 to 11, so 7%. I guess I could say approximately. Okay, so definitely a better handwriting than mine, but that's about the idea. I mean, the IQRs of Z and 1 and 3 are similar, and that's what I was saying there. But really, that's where they differ the most, is in their ranges or their spreads. So I think I hit it there. I'll move on. Feel pretty confident on that. Got 10 minutes left, so I should move on anyways. Okay, so consider a piece of pottery known to have originated from one of these 3 sites, but the actual site is not known. So suppose an analysis of the clay reveals that the sum of the percentages of the three chemicals, X, Y, and Z, is 20.5%. Based on the box plot, which site 1, 2, or 3 is most likely the site in which the pottery originated? Justify your answer. Okay, so I'll say using the medians, site 1 chemical sum is approximately 7. That's for X, the median's about 7, 13 for Y, and about 7 again, so it's about 27. Site 2 chemical sum, and it is percent, so I should throw that in there, is approximately, from site 2 it's about 6 plus 3 plus 7, which is 16%. And site 3 chemical sum is approximately 6 plus 7 plus 7, which is approximately 20. At 20%. Okay, so what I'm getting here is, if I were to guess which one it's definitely site 3. So site 3 would be most likely. So since the IQRs in site 3 are close to, I guess I should say are mostly close to their medians. In other words, what we get from site 3 shouldn't vary that much. Medians used. Okay, so again, it looks tricky, but hopefully after seeing that explanation, you were like, oh, that really wasn't that hard. Really, the hard part is finding all the words to write to make it sound like you know what you're doing. Okay, suppose only one chemical could be analyzed in the piece of pottery. Which chemicals, X, Y, or Z, would be most useful in identifying the site where the piece of pottery originated? Okay, so again, this time we have to find the chemical that would best identify which site it's from. Okay, so looking through all the chemicals, chemical X is always hovering around 6 or 7% for each of the three sites, right? So again, chemical X here, chemical X here, chemical X here. So if you came back and you got something that was centered, about 6.25, that could be all three of them. So don't use chemical X as your indicator. Same thing with chemical Z, but look at chemical Y. Chemical Y's values in this bar graph, in this bar graph, and in this bar graph, if you kind of slid them all horizontally, none of them will be overlapping. So chemical Y. None of the box plots overlap in their ranges of percentages. I guess I'll say, for example, a chemical Y percentage of 12 can clearly only occur at site 1. Similarly, a percentage of 3 can only occur at site 2, right? So again, hopefully in the end you found this question easier than kind of the other 3. It's just analyzing this chart and understanding really what they're asking is the hard part. And then of course you have to use a lot of words to defend what you're doing here. Now that whole extra example thing, that's just, you don't really need to throw that in there, but the key is that none of the box plots overlap in the ranges of percentages. But anyways, let's read through and see how I did. Okay, so part A, the median values for chemical Z are similar in all 3 sites, about 7%, yay. Ranges in chemical Z are much different for the 3 sites, with the smallest being about 2%, and yeah, being about 7% from 3 to 11. Oh yeah, 3 to 11 is 8. Silly me. Well, luckily I said approximately 7, so I guess I could still get away with that. Okay, thinking too quick. All right, now let's just really break down the scoring guideline and see what they say. Essential 1, the medians or the centers are almost the same, and the variability, the ranges in the IQRs are different across the 3 sites, and you included context that you're talking about chemical, chemical Z at all 3 sites. So you have to mention chemical Z in the 3 sites somehow in your answer in order to get full credit. Okay, part B. Obviously, no one has time to make this whole chart. I just think that's kind of funny. But you can see what they're doing here is the minimum and maximum. So you can see that like from site 1, if you only use the minimum values, you'd get 21. If you only use the maximum values, you'd get 33. In site 2, you'd only be from 13 to 19. Site 3 is the only one that actually contains the value of interest. Now, that makes it kind of interesting to me to see how they did that. Interesting, they do want the minimums and maximums. Okay, never mind. If an alternate, let me see here, if an alternate measure is used that involves the sum of the 3 chemicals, such as the sum of the medians for the first quartiles and third quartiles, instead of minimums and maximums, the second component is not satisfied, but the third component might be satisfied. If the response explicitly compares the alternate sums between the other 2 sites, are 27.5, 16, and 20. Okay. Interesting. So they really wanted you to be a little bit more specific. They wanted you to compare the minimums and the maximums. So I mean, I guess you do have time to do that, but you really got to move quick. You don't have to make this full chart, but that was interesting to see that you didn't use the medians there. So they did want you to use the actual minimum and maximum values to show clearly that there's no way for that to occur. Right, so there's no way to get 20.5. There's no way to get 20.5, but here 20.5 is plausible. So that's what I learned. And last but not least, essentially correct if we choose chemical Y and give reasonable justification based on the fact that chemical Y is distinctive across the sites. Okay, so again, you can get a partial if you say something about box plots, but don't clearly indicate that the distributions are distinctive across the sites. Now technically, saying none of the box plots overlap in the ranges of percentages, that is another way of saying they are distinctive. So I do think that has satisfied that requirement. So again, justification must address location and variability by stating the box plots do not overlap for chemical Y. Awesome, yay, I did it. Okay, so big thing I learned in this question was, and again, I mean, this question's so unique and so different, it's not like this necessarily helps in the future, but evidently they wanted you to add all the minimum values to get the lowest possible amount from any site and add all the maximums to get the highest possible value. And by comparing those ranges, you'll clearly get one answer. Now, I'll be honest, that wasn't my first thought. It didn't really come to mind, but also remember I've been taking time to score myself as I go through these. So there is time to really go through and do that. If you're not trying to score yourself at the same time. So this is not the best approach. Make sure you find the minimum possible from site 1, the maximum possible from site 1, and you'll see the only one that contains your value of interest is site 3. Okay.